and welcome into another exciting episode of Pete versus Anxiety, the mental health podcast, breaking the stigma that mental health is talked about enough today, guys. My guest is here today. She is in the back scenes right now. We're going to do a little different format this week. We're going to start off with just beautiful me right now. I'm going to do a couple of, run some commercials for the other shows here on the Oracle Talk Radio Network, since you guys love Pete versus Anxiety. So let's go ahead and run through a few of these really quick. First up, we have In the Know with one of our founders, Jenny.
In the Know with Jenny Nicasio, your home for pop culture and trending topics from all over the United States. All with commentary from your favorite host, Jenny Nicasio. Tune in Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Eastern, only on the Oracle Talk Radio Network. The Chasing Prophecy Radio Show, where we discuss everything and anything beyond the scope of normal. Hosted by Jenny Nicasio and Tom Conway. Chasing Prophecy is your premier destination for all things paranormal. Tune in. Bookish Podcast, hosted by Emma Saylor, is a unique look at all things literature and is your radio book club. Read along as Emma takes us through discussions of her books of the month, and you can chime in and give your feedback as well. Tune in Tuesdays at 3:30 p.m., only on the Oracle Talk Radio Network. The Mystic Whispers Podcast, hosted by the psychic seer herself, Nicole Gaspard. Each week, Nicole shares her experiences and views, as well as interviews guests. Tune in Wednesdays at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, only on the Oracle Talk Radio Network.
I'm Mike.
And I'm Richard. And together, we are the Stay Off My Lawn Show and Podcast.
And together we tackle the important political issues from the week.
We'll also have smart and maybe not so smart audio clips from our elected officials.
And have way too much fun in the process.
So tune in to Stay Off My Lawn every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Right here on the Oracle Talk Radio Network.
All right, guys, let's welcome my guest this week, the international bestseller Melissa Kim Corter. How you doing today, Melissa?
Hey, Pete, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me again.
Definitely. And by the way, guys, in case you don't know, the audio hasn't come out yet. Me and Melissa have sat down before. This is actually a second engagement for us. The first time we talked on shadow working and stuff like that. I think this week we decided narcissism, right? Because that was listed on your sheet over there.
Yeah.
So well, it's great to see you, though. How's everything going?
Good. It's been an interesting whirlwind of a weekend, and I'm just glad to be sitting in this seat.
Right. Well, it's great to have you. Like I said, this is since the last time we talked, I am almost double booked to the end of the year for at 10 a.m. and then starting next week, I do a 3 p.m. show as well. Nice. So I was like, man, this is awesome. It's taking off quick.
Good for you. That's fantastic. I mean, what you're doing is amazing.
Yes,
so
definitely.
Needed. This is great.
Last week we had a woman who was telling us what it was like to be dead for 5 minutes. I was like,
oh my gosh.
Okay, we didn't see that coming.
Right? Oh my God. That's the great thing, right? About these organic conversations.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Because the sheets are, like the sheet I sent you, you've seen it, it's just basic information. But she was like, yeah, well, I was dead for 5 minutes. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, do tell.
Maybe let's talk about that. Yeah.
Oh, she did. She went into great detail. There's a lot of stuff she didn't have on the sheet originally when we were talking, and I was just like, "What the hell?" I'm like, "Whoa, okay." Guys, this week my Tuesday drop was going to be the pre-recorded interview with someone that was actually involved in the Columbine shooting. She was actually a victim. She was in the actual library with somebody, and from what I can guess, she's about 5-6 feet away from them that she could see them. So that was intense too. I was talking to her, and it was like, she was like, "Yeah," I was like a few feet away from him. Like, what?
Wow.
So like I didn't even expect that part either, because what she said she had something to do with it, but didn't say exactly what it was. But then when she got in air, she was like, well, I was so close I could see the whites of the guy's eyes. I'm like, huh?
Gosh, stories are incredible. You just never know, right? What somebody's been through or what their experience is until you give them an opportunity.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's the great thing about this is that, people just want to come on here and be heard. And that's the main thing, is people just being heard. And it's great to hear them, what they have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So any news about your new book?
A little bit. It's coming along. So we got it in, it's in the editing process right now, which is super exciting. I don't know, I geek out over stuff like that, but it's kind of fun.
I'm definitely writing a book. I would be geeking out about it too. Why not?
Yeah, it's so fun. You just watch it come to life. And especially when you have really great editors and people that believe in the work that you're doing, it's so different than just tweaking something, right? Like making adjustments to grammar, but to actually give life to it in a new way. And I'm just in awe of the process. So I'm excited. I wish I could bump up the date. It doesn't come out until like
Ooh, do you have
fall
a
of 2025.
we'll
But I'm
see. We'll
just
have to have you back for a
so,
third time. You can come on and tell us about the book and everything. That
that's
way
right.
we can do it. We'll plan it right
Yeah,
about the time when it comes out. That way you can sell it out to everybody.
that'd be fantastic. It's
Definitely,
such
yeah.
a good
So just keep me in touch on that and let me know for sure when it is exactly. If you when you get a date figured out for me, and then we'll definitely set it up for that.
awesome. Yeah, that'd be great.
You never know. By then, I might have 3 shows during the day, so we'll see.
Right? I know, especially when you find your groove and you're good at it and it's awesome and things start clicking and falling into place. And, I just love watching people thrive, like, and when they found their zone of genius, it's really
Y-
quite amazing.
Yeah, and like I said, this thing is just taken off completely. It's crazy, how fast I've gotten to where I'm at now, and it's just everybody wants a piece of it. And then, I get the constant jokes of, "Oh, well, do I have to wait till next year to be on your show?" You might have to if you don't do it now. Like you gotta set a date. I'm sorry, they fill up that fast.
That's right. That's great. That's good.
So, narcissism now. Okay. So I know that was the topic we picked this week. Do you want to give everybody a little idea of how you identify one, like personality traits, things like that?
Oh man, it's such a loaded question because there's overt narcissism, there's covert narcissism, and there's things that are hidden, there's things that are obvious. One of the things that I look at when I kind of work with this subject matter is I looked at the aftermath of how someone who is in proximity to the narcissist, how they feel. The the patterns of behavior are sometimes easier to see after, right? Hindsight. That's part of the damage that's done in this type of experience when we've encountered someone who is a narcissist or has different levels of narcissism. I think that might actually be a good place to begin. So first of all, it's something that we want to consider that all of us have a certain degree of narcissism within us. It's not inherently a bad thing. What happens though is when it becomes heightened, inflated, or something that starts to really dominate the personality, that's when it becomes a dangerous thing. So to fall in love with yourself, to love what you do, to be proud of what you achieve and things like that, there's a healthy level of narcissism there, to put even the work that we do right in this way, podcast and being an author, speaker of any kind, you sort of need to engage a little bit of those qualities in order to put your things out into the world so that people can find them, so that you can do the good service that you're doing, right? Without marketing it, people don't know that it exists, and it doesn't reach the people that it needs to. So on one level, there's this healthy narcissism, which is being able to bring attention to the self and to do it for good reasons. And every now and then we just want to check ourselves to see, okay, am I getting a little bit too inflated? Meaning my ego is getting a bit bolstered and maybe I've lost touch with why I started to do the work or, things like that. So we check in. But when narcissism becomes a problem is when we start operating from this particular, this mindset, there's layers to this. There's all these different qualities and characteristics and things. But when that becomes our dominant way of being, and we start to minimize other people and only make it about our experience, that's when it's really lopsided. So some of the people who operate through this label of narcissism, they're going to be people who they don't necessarily value other people's opinions. They don't necessarily value others in general. In fact, the way that people are usually utilized in their lives are as pawns or objects. So when you see someone who's just sort of saying what they need to say, doing what they need to do to achieve a goal, but not really having any conscience around it, not considering how other people might feel, right? So then we have the layers of empathy involved. All of that's lacking for a narcissist. They will use people for their agenda versus having an actual relationship or caring about the person. So there's lots of qualities and lots of traits, but that might be like kind of a good place to begin.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I know, like, when people hear narcissism, they always think of the direct opposite, the evil end of it, basically. Like they're
Right.
like, well, it's always bad. But like you said, everybody has some of those traits already, and it can be positive. But as you're saying, that's the negative sides of it.
Yeah. It's kind of like if you think of even rage and anger, there's healthy ways to process and to channel those emotions into creativity, to express them so that they don't wreak havoc on the body or the mind or cause harm to other people. But when we start to only know how to live through the lens of rage or anger, it's destructive. Narcissism is very similar. It's protective coping mechanisms that we start to. The narcissist will be operating out of these coping mechanisms, and they're not necessarily conscious. So this is where it gets a little tricky too, because people sometimes assume that narcissists always are conscious of everything that they're doing. And that's not always true. They may not actually understand what's driving their behavior. They may not know what the origin was of their of a traumatic event or moment or a shift within their psyche that created some of these dominant patterns. So some of them, it begins in childhood. Sometimes it can actually shift into adulthood. It isn't necessarily something we're born with. It's similar to the topic of psychopathy and psychopaths for very similar reasons. It's always like, okay, chicken or the edge, or chicken or the egg, which came first?
Yeah, see
Was
that
it the
that's their
environment?
argument.
Like what produces these kind of individuals? I think of, well, and if we look at even the definition of psychopath, it means suffering soul. And I think narcissists really do fall into that same type of a category. It's just difficult though, because it's hard to have any kind of empathy or compassion toward them because they lack it in their way, in their behaviors and responses to others as well. So it's really tricky. There's a lot of manipulation. There's different levels of that manipulation. There's so many different ways that it's presented. And again, the overt covert. So it's like how much is shown and how much is hidden. That's where it gets also really tricky for people to notice it, because these types of people can get away with this for long periods of time. And it's usually a situation, especially for more like the hidden type of this personality, they'll get away with this pattern and they will leave a wake of damage in their path. And so that's usually how there's been a psychopath or like a serious narcissist at hand, is that you're looking at the damage. You're looking at what was done. You're dealing with people who now have to sort of either rebuild their lives or have to heal from the abuse cycle, from just being in proximity to this person. So there are extremes for sure, but there can be just subtle traces of it too, where you might have someone who doesn't know how to have a relationship unless it's all about them, or friendship or some type of other interaction without it being oriented around how they're doing, their personality, their achievements. So there's all these different indicators, but I feel like the best is really trusting our instinct. If you listen to your intuition, it doesn't mean you're going to get it right. And it doesn't mean you're going to avoid falling into the trap of some of these
Right.
individuals, but you'll start to all of a sudden just feel like something is off here. This doesn't seem right. You might catch them in a lie. You might realize like, wow, what they're demonstrating, what I'm seeing, which we see the persona. So this is where a lot of us are fooled, because the persona is the part of them. It's the mask we show to the world. It's the personality. We fall for that. And so what's happening is this whole other side is operating behind that persona, but we don't want to believe that what we're seeing isn't real. So they're very convincing. There's a lot of artificial charm that's used on their end. They can be the most charismatic people, which is what makes it even harder for us to go, there's something wrong with this person. Because usually there's a follow-up of everybody loves them. everybody gets along with them. Everybody just fawns over this individual. Yet behind the scenes, when we're dealing with a real narcissist, there will be people who are interacting with them who are catching the brunt of their behaviors behind closed doors. So it's a really difficult dynamic to be entangled in.
Yeah, definitely. That's what it sounds like too, and it sounds like a lot of times they mask a lot of the things to hide them. I'm trying to think of a reference for that though, but yeah, that and a lot of you see a lot in a lot of these movies too, where like they're all nice, they put on a show, and then behind the scenes, it's instant flips of the switch, and it's all about me now, or
Exactly.
all that other kind of stuff you see a lot of times, and I think it's crazy because, like I said, like people find it in a negative way, but if as you say, we all have the same traits and things like that. What do you suggest people do if they run into someone that's a narcissist? Like I know a lot of people say, well, I'm stuck, I can't go anywhere, I don't have nothing, I don't know what to do. Is there a way they can actually protect themselves in case they do run into one of these individuals? Because
Yeah,
a lot of people are easily manipulated
for
and are
sure.
easily sucked into things, or those ones that have that quick attachment type thing, and stuff like that. Or you want to use the catchword of clingers. A lot of us used to joke about things that wedding crashers, and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's so difficult, especially these days. I can't tell you the exact statistic. I don't have it in mind at the moment, but the likelihood that we're going to encounter these types of individuals is extremely high. At one point in time, it was something like, again, I don't have the exact number, so don't take it literally, but just an estimate would be something like 1 in 300 people or something like that. It was like
Yeah.
quite a gap. And now it's like 1 in 10 people. So that's kind of scary to think about, which means you're likely going to have them in your family. You might be married to one of them might be your children. So certainly it is difficult. It isn't something where we have this luxury to say, well, how do I get away or how do I steer clear? I think there's comfort in thinking like, okay, I'll run into somebody like this at the post office, or in a way in my life where maybe it's not so significant. But the truth is they're very deeply entwined, because our culture is also amplifying these qualities and these traits. So there is that parallel influence of the culture. And we are being sort of rewarded in Western culture specifically to be all about ourselves, to market ourselves, to put ourselves out there, to be the best, to be the star. And so, because there's so many behaviors that have been normalized more so than 10, 15, 20 years ago, especially with the online world becoming what it's been and different social media platforms that are emerging, these are great things. There's nothing wrong with them, but they will amplify certain qualities within us. So that's sort of a piece of why there's so many more narcissists today than there was. It's kind of a joking sort of funny thing. It's like everybody's a narcissist these days, but in a way there's some truth to that, because there are more because of all of these different layers of influence. And one of the things that I feel is a great practice for people, because when you've really been impacted by a narcissist, if you're trying to break away or if you're trying to set some boundaries, it doesn't work the way it would with a normal individual who's not operating through that framework. Boundaries are triggering to them. The idea that you have something that you need to be instated is kind of like a joke to them. They think they're above the law. They think they're beyond boundaries and parameters. They don't think that typical things really apply to them. So it is difficult to set boundaries or start to say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, or this is how I'm going to communicate. What you really want to do is start by getting a sense of self. And I know this kind of sounds a little funny, but really just reaffirming that you're not crazy. You're probably being gaslit on some level. You're not necessarily overanalyzing, overthinking, because a lot of people that are impacted by narcissists will feel that way. They because they're the ones that have that level of empathy engaged, the conscience that's engaged, they'll question themselves. They'll internalize a lot of the behaviors and go, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me that I feel this way? What's wrong with me that I'm, in this dynamic with this person? And it's one of the ways that the mind is trying to cope with what's happening, because it can be very disorienting. Depending on their level of manipulation, it's extremely disorienting. And it starts to really chip away at your self-esteem and your confidence. So the first thing is to really start working on that in your way, privately, internally. I have clients that I've recommended just start journaling, start putting things in there about what you're noticing, what you're tracking, what you're aware of, because it's so easy if you have a narcissist in your life and they're a very strong presence in your life, like on a regular basis, you're going to need to build up your confidence, because otherwise their energy and presence is really going to overpower the situation. So journaling, reminding yourself that you're doing the right thing, that you're just trying to find the right communication pattern. That's a place to begin, because again, it'll chip away at your confidence, your self-esteem. You'll question yourself. You'll do all the things they're not doing.
Yeah. Okay. So when you say question yourself, I know that comes associated with gaslighting a lot. Do you want to give them a definition of what that actually is?
Sure. So gaslighting, first of all, is when, let's say something happens, you observe someone's behavior clear as day. Let's say you're watching someone freak out on someone in the grocery store. Okay. And then you walk out of the grocery store with that person and you're like, wow, that was really intense. What's going on there? Right. Or whatever reaction you might have. That person, when someone is like a master manipulator and they use gaslighting as a tactic, they will take the circumstance and turn it around. They'll minimize it. They'll try to act like it didn't happen the way that you recall it. They'll try to make it like you're crazy, like you're not seeing things clearly. But the issue with this is that's one example that's kind of like a big scene. But this can happen on a smaller scale with just day-to-day things, where it's like, I told you that I have this appointment at 2 p.m. and that you told them, and yet they will be adamant that you didn't tell them. How dare you accuse them of lying, or things like that. So it doesn't have to be this huge ordeal that happens. It can be these small things where they're just consistently over time trying to minimize your efforts, trying to make you at fault, trying to blame you. They don't take any responsibility for themselves. So gaslighting, it looks different for many people, but there's always lies, manipulation. There's always this way of kind of trying to change the scene or even alter your memory of what happened. And so from being on the receiving end of that, questioning yourself might be, oh, wow, well, am I overreacting? Did it play out the way that I remember it playing?
Or am I crazy, like you said in earlier? Yeah. I do remember that because my ex did that to me. And she kind of did something similar. And I had those thoughts of like, I thought I was crazy. Like she's like, oh no, you've met this person. No, I haven't. I remember everybody I've met. I've not met this person. Stuff like that, basically, right?
That what you just said is a great example of how it could be kind of subtle, right? Yeah. It's like your life doesn't hinge on you meeting this person or not meeting this person. So it almost seems like this insignificant detail, but later when you reflect back, it's like, oh wow, there's those little hints along the way. It's like they're seeding things along the way. It's a great example.
Basically, yeah, that's what it feels like too, because they'll just start seeding the story and start trying to plant the idea that, oh, you've met this person, you know who this is. And I'm like, no, I don't. And then eventually you start questioning reality of like, am I really going crazy? Is it really just me that I haven't met this person, or that I've met this person I don't remember? And then you start questioning it, basically. So, basically what you just said, just give people an idea that I've dealt with it before. It's exactly what she's saying is exactly how it goes. Like, and you don't even notice it at first unless you start picking up on the little subtle things of, where they start kind of sewing it in there a little bit to you that, oh no, you remember I told you about this. And I'm like, oh no. And I think now that's what I do. Now I get a little upset easier is when someone I feel like somebody's trying to do that when I know it's really not the case. it'll be a trigger thing for me. I'll just start getting really upset easily, but then I got to rethink about it really fast. I'm like, wait, no, this is not the same scenario, or what did they call it? What did they say? Like Vietnam flashbacks, what my wife likes to say. So she's like Vietnam flashbacks kind of thing, which I mean makes sense though, because she's not wrong, because certain things will trigger you to remember those kind of feelings you had when you you had dealt with those kind of things, and it's just like it's crazy, but I mean it happens. Thankfully I got out when I did, but it was like I didn't see it, but everyone else saw it, and everybody else was trying to get to me and tell me, hey man, there's something wrong about this, but you're so hyper focused that you don't want to believe anything anyone's saying, because it's like, oh no, y'all are crazy, you're all crazy, like that. And she had the ability to manipulate really good, and then she tried to turn me against everybody, and I started to turn against everybody, and then I had a couple friends eventually break through and tell me, hey man, this is what's going on, you need to pay attention to these details. And then little by little they pulled me back out of it. Thankfully they pulled me back out of it, because I was going down a bad hole. I was going down the proverbial rabbit hole. So but yeah, I can relate to all that. It's like, oh yeah, it felt surreal when you started saying that. I was like, oh god, yep, she's not wrong.
Yeah, it's really difficult, right? It's like I was saying, hindsight, it's easier to see the pieces of things. And that's the most challenging, I think, for some of the people that are victimized by this behavior, by this pattern, by this personality disorder. Because there's, some people that actually have the personality disorder. Some of them have been diagnosed, some of them have not. Some of them just have these qualities that emerge with their various triggers. But it is difficult because of that questioning self. And the thing that is important to keep in mind too is that's something they do. They exploit the weaknesses or perceived weaknesses. I don't believe they're weaknesses, but they exploit what the narcissist would perceive as a weakness in the victim, in the individual. So
not to cut you off though, but it's kind of like picking at little scabs, really, if you really want to give it a real idea, because they're kind of just picking at things, trying to see what they can get you to react to, and then that's when they just dig in on that part of it. Would that not be a good example too?
Yeah, absolutely. They know it. That's a great example, because it's like, it doesn't have to be just this one thing that just starts one day. It usually is over time. They'll get to know you. They'll also act like they're your greatest ally, supporter, friend. They'll be very charming. They'll build you up, but then they will also simultaneously find ways to tear you down. It may not be direct, and it can be quite unconscious or hidden, but there's something to that as well, which is which makes the bond with those individuals really difficult to break. But the exploiting the weaknesses or these different blind spots that we have is critical to understanding this, because these aren't things that we can outsmart ourselves through. I can't even tell you the amount of people that I have dealt with that are like these high achieving, amazing people doing the coolest stuff, like just amazing, wonderful individuals, really intelligent, affluent, and it has nothing to do with anything when it comes down to being victimized by a narcissist. It doesn't matter how smart you are. There's nothing you can do to stop yourself from falling into the trap of the different ruses they have. But what you can do is you can catch that sooner and sooner and sooner and sooner. You can avoid, I don't want to say you can avoid every circumstance, but I do think there's moments you'll be able to avoid certain ones by just trusting your instinct and going, something feels off here. I'm going to wait till I'm by myself to make a decision. That's another piece of advice I give people is like, if you're with a narcissist or around them or they're a family member, they often want to pull you into their drama. They want to pull you into whatever narrative or story is going on. And one of the best things you can do is get by yourself to get clear, to see how you feel, because there's also a relationship between highly sensitive people who sometimes identify as empathic individuals, where they're just really attuned to people's emotions and emotional states, and they're sensitive. But that sensitivity can feel like a burden until it becomes a blessing. But the narcissist is the one that's actually exploiting that dynamic. So they look for sensitive people. They will They'll look for people who have a huge heart or are compassionate, kind, because they know there's more giving there. There's more they can take from that type of personality. They'll look for people who are more agreeable because they can get away with more. So it's not about like, don't be kind, don't have a huge heart, don't be sensitive. Those are all
Right.
gifts, right? There's actually jealousy that comes from the narcissist because they don't have those things. They feel very separate from who they are. They have deep emotional wounding when it comes to who they are, their value, right? So they devalue other people and they really destroy relationships and things like that. But you can really come back to, what do I feel like when I'm alone? What decision would I make? Here I am alone, sitting, thinking about this, kind of tuning in to whatever the situation is. How would I respond to this? Because when you're with the person and you're sensitive, you may misidentify what you want, what you think, what you feel for theirs because they're the dominant personality in that situation. So the other thing is, first, like I said, journaling, getting to really be clear on the details and the facts and writing it out. So later you can look in your journal and go, okay, I wasn't making this up. I'm not exaggerating, right? And then the next thing is time alone and making decisions, especially big decisions that involve these individuals, because if they're after money, if they're after resources or something else, that can really be quite tragic for the person that is fooled by them. So if you practice this, let me think about that, or let me sit with it. Anybody that doesn't want to give you time to make a decision, or anyone that doesn't feel like you are worthy to have some time to sit on something or make a decision about it, that's a huge red flag. They're trying to pressure, maybe on some level. They're trying to force you to quickly decide something for their benefit. So that's another thing, is decision making. Communication is difficult because you can't really win with these individuals. They're picking apart everything you're saying. They're waiting for you to say certain things so they can turn it against you. They're going to find fault with whatever it is that you say. They're going to turn it around. There's no winning. And I don't think the goal is to win. I think the goal is to disengage as much as you possibly can, observe as much as you can, and try to have the least amount of interaction so that you can really be methodical and slow in your responses. And that's difficult to do when you feel pressure, if they're intense, if they're loud, or have a very booming presence. But communication patterns are interesting because they're always thinking strategically. You're always like an object or a person that's on the path that can help them, or you're on the path in their way. And either way, you want to take the time to kind of sit with decisions and think about communication and how you want to approach things. Rushing doesn't work. Trying to win doesn't work either.
Well, you got to win. Come on, now. That's how things work in society today. We have to be the winner of the group, all right? If not, So with narcissism, though, my next question for you is that, is there, like, how people like to automatically say, oh, you're automatically narcissistic, are there other things that fall in that category that might be similar to it that people may misunderstand and think it's
Yeah.
narcissism, but it's not? Because I do think that happens a lot. A lot of people mislabel things nowadays,
Oh, absolutely.
or like to say, look, they like to use WebMD and go look up everything and then automatically think they've got cancer before they know anything.
Exactly. Oh my God. I love this question. Actually, it's a great question because there are other things, and they're not necessarily just like personality disorders or things like that, although there are other things, but reactions and stuff like that. So for example, let's say that I can use a very personal example. I've had people think that treat me like I'm a narcissist because it was the first time they experienced one of my boundaries. So sometimes what happens, right, is I'm a business owner. I've been in business for 20 years and I'm a depth psychologist. I'm an author, a speaker, but I've mentored people. I have classes, programs, all sorts of stuff that I've done for a long time. And in that time, I have had to be less available to clients or students or what have you in order to get anything accomplished and to have certain systems in place in my business. So one example of how this kind of can be misperceived is all of a sudden when I started to have my assistant help out and answer my Facebook Messenger or respond to emails, you would have thought that people were just like that I committed the most horrific act the way that they started to act. Like, what do you mean Melissa's not answering this? What do you mean it's so and so? Like, how dare you have one of your, team members? I'm so important. And I'm thinking like, wow, that's interesting. So entitlement is really an interesting dynamic that can play into this. When somebody feels entitled to your time, to your energy, and they don't like you having a boundary or a policy in place or something else that's legit and actually quite neutral, right? You can be perceived as a narcissist. Then they might start to say things like, oh, you're not available anymore. Now you're too popular. Now you think you're better than anyone else.
Now they try to guilt trip you, kind of is what it sounds like next. The next thing to make you feel bad. It's like, well, guys, I'm a business owner. I have a lot of networks, a lot of things going on here. So I have to have other people help me
Yes.
respond. And that's what people start to learn when we're doing this podcast. I think that's what we touched on the first subject, is how people understand how these things work. Like, they'll message me and go, all right, cool, let's set the date right now. I'm like, let me see if it's available. Hold on.
Yeah, there's a process here. There's an entire process you have to be successful, to spend your time doing what you enjoy. And it's the same thing. So I feel like an entitlement can be one of those things. Now, it's interesting, right? Because the other side of that is narcissists will often act entitled. They act like they're entitled to resources, people, situations. But when it's misperceived, sometimes the person who is then wanting to call someone a narcissist, what they're actually doing is projecting. So projection becomes a huge part of this conversation. Just because we don't like something doesn't mean someone's a narcissist. Just because we don't like the boundary that's been put up in order to, have things run smoothly doesn't mean they're a narcissist. Just because they want you to sign a contract or pay a deposit so I'm kind of joking, but I'm not, because these are actual things that have happened just even within my own business. And the narcissist is sort of blind to a lot of their own behaviors. And so they will use projection. I also had this with old situation, let's just say, where I supported someone in my business and was someone who offered them lots of resources and support. And I felt like I was doing the right thing and being of service, and they took and they took and they took. And when I said, okay, I changed my phone number and I didn't give this person my phone number because it was a very unhealthy sort of entanglement. And I started again having my assistant step in and other people kind of trying to separate them from my life. And they lashed out and it got so nasty and started telling people I was a narcissist. I'm like, are you kidding me? So a lot of things revolve around business, obviously, just because that's my framework or what I'm operating from. But I see this a lot too in families where there is a child or a adult now child who decided to do things different than the parent, to take a different path. Sometimes when our children are growing up and they cross that threshold where they're starting to go make a life for themselves independent of their parents, it can really trigger the parents. And we can see a lot of narcissism come out in that dynamic where the parents are like, how dare you? I've done this for you. You're not going to do it my way. And the child is just trying to become an adult in this really difficult situation. And so I've actually watched the narcissist label someone who wasn't a narcissist as one and try to convince others that they were, because they didn't want to follow the same path. So I think, again, it's like an undertone of entitlement, but we have to really be mindful of what is activating us or triggering us. And instead of just automatically assuming someone's a narcissist, it would also suit us to kind of sit with it a little bit and be like, what am I really reacting to? Am I overreacting? Am I upset? Am I angry? Because otherwise we really we've been watering that word down for quite some time, the word narcissist. And it's really damaging to people who are dealing with them, when it's just thrown around because somebody doesn't like a response that they were given. It's important for us also, just one other quick like fact on this. It's important for us to remember that how we show up in life, we are multidimensional people. We're showing so many different parts of our personalities to each other. Like right now, you're experiencing one part of my personality because I'm sharing, I'm speaking, I'm doing a little maybe teaching in there. That's going to be very different than how I was this weekend hanging out celebrating my son's birthday. There's different parts of me that show up there. The same thing happens when we encounter people that are creating an opportunity for us to grow. So like I had mentioned, setting a boundary, doing something different, there are going to be people who are, let's say, toxic. They don't have to be narcissists. They can just be toxic. It can just be an unhealthy situation. And you might be someone that just says, you know what, this is, I've just got to stop this. I've got to cut this off. I've got to distance myself from this person. They're toxic. It's unhealthy, whatever. And then because you've done that, they are only going to see that part of you. And so in their mind, you're a narcissist. You're this terrible person, where really it's like you had to be the one to put an end to something that was unhealthy for both of you. So that's also important, is all this different, we're projecting all the time. And projection is basically where this ties into the shadow a little bit again, where it's like all the parts that our ego doesn't want to recognize within itself, it projects onto other people. And it can't see those parts within itself because it doesn't want to believe that it's capable of that. So when we are labeling people narcissists without really sitting with it, tuning in, gauging, am I just overreacting? Am I being a brat? Am I upset? We're not taking responsibility for our role or our place within a situation. And the best thing you can do is just check in with yourself, because often you'll find like, you know what, I'm just really angry because maybe if you're in that situation where that person pulls away because it's toxic or it's whatever, that doesn't mean that people are bad. It means that the dynamic was unhealthy. But sometimes we want to label that like bad, wrong, right? Because it doesn't feel good. And so it's so easy for us to slip into this wanting to label someone a certain way when really we're deeply hurt, maybe feel a little bit of shame or guilt somewhere in there too. And I feel that for a lot of people, when they're throwing around the term narcissist or misidentifying somebody else as a narcissist, they're actually really out of touch with their own feelings and are not necessarily clear that what they're doing is projecting. And that can cause a lot of harm too.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, I mean, if you think about it, a lot of people do mislabel things or they take it the wrong direction. Like they get their feelings hurt if, somebody pulls back, and then it's, you abandoned me. You left,
Exactly.
this and that. No, I got away from this situation because it
Yeah.
was so bad that you're ruining my day-to-day life, that I
Yeah.
can't handle being around this anymore. And it's time to cut the head off the serpent, as they like to say,
Yeah.
and kind of move on with everything and stuff like that. And then it's, if children get involved, then it's the kids are used as a weapon against you too. And it's, everything's weaponized, as I like to say, though, because, they don't like the situation. So now they want to control the narrative, and we're all quick to judge these days of everything. And that's the whole reason, like I said, I did this whole podcast is for people to understand that a lot of these things that people deal with are different than what you really think it is. Like, of course we all know what WebMD or Wikipedia tells us, but Wikipedia is not always the most exactly accurate thing, guys. And I forgot what the other one was. He was talking to a gentleman yesterday, Dr. Tim Blake. He was telling me about something else. He said, "Oh no, he mentioned another one, but I can't remember what it's exactly." But we were having a conversation about that, and he was like, "Yeah, Wikipedia is nice, but you need this other one." And I'm like, "Damn, I should get one of those, huh?"
Yeah. It's
And it's to touch on your point about how people get upset because you don't answer them directly. It's like, guys, I think y'all need to understand that she does a lot more than one. As you just heard her say, she has many hats in this thing. I assume she's emailing me back sometimes too. I'm not sure. She does, she doesn't. I mean, it's okay. I value the time that she's emailing me back and forth. I believe it's most of the time it is that she's emailing me. If not, I'm like, I'm not mad. I mean, I understand she's a busy woman. You
Yeah,
know, and
and I usually let people know too. I'll say,
you
my
can tell by
assistant.
the way the message is written that it's you.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it, because you can tell you have a certain signing off on yours, the way you say it, and I know it's you, and I'm like, okay, cool. If not, it's like, oh, then somebody must just be copying this thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm also very transparent about it. Like when
Yeah.
even with Messenger and even with things like that,
Hmm.
I would announce it to people, or I would send an email to my clients and say, "Hey guys, just here you go. Please don't send any personal information back and forth, and here's why." And that in itself was the trigger for people. It was like, "What do you mean I can't send you my 16 paragraphs of what's in my mind right now for free?"
I can't send
To
you my
try to
news
get your
article about everything that doesn't make any sense right now. Come on now, it's all about me.
Yeah, or messages, it would blow your mind. I mean, I'm sure you get them too, but it would
Oh
blow your
God.
mind to see some of the messages. People, strangers, people I've never met, never worked with, and will send me paragraph after paragraph of what's going on with them. And to come back to what you said though, the good in that is they want to be heard. And I
Hmm.
definitely don't take it lightly that people feel safe with me to express. And because I have a compassionate heart and want to help as many people as I possibly can, I have to be mindful of not burning out, not draining
Hmm.
myself, and not running myself into the ground. So yeah, healthy boundaries. But when you were just talking, Pete, one of the things too about the like you said, how sometimes it's doing what we have to do just for our own sanity or for a situation that's just unhealthy and chopping off the snake's head, that kind of thing. There's a term called ghosting that also gets misused a lot
Yep.
around all of this stuff too. And, I've had that happen before where I had set boundary after boundary and somebody continued to disrespect me and go around me and try to get other people to buy into the narrative to the point where it was just so detrimental and over the top, where I was like, all right, I'm done. I've given this person, this thing, so much of my energy and time. It's draining me. If I have to think about something for more than an hour or two a day ongoing and it's consuming because you're just trying to find a solution, you're trying to do the right thing, but you realize there is no solution with certain personalities, they just take. Then I get to the point where I'm like, that's it. We have to cut ties with this person. And so we tried to do everything very in a positive manner, and it just didn't go well. Unfortunately, it came down to, okay, unfriend and block on social media. And I don't want any more contact with them if I can, do that via email or whatever. But then their narrative is, oh, she ghosted me after all these years that I knew her. And I'm like, let's be honest here. You saw me speak somewhere. We didn't know each other. We didn't have a deep
Yeah. Right.
relationship. You observed me somewhere. And although I'm grateful for that, and I'm so grateful that people resonate with things that I might share or talk about. There's no just more rewarding feeling than just knowing that the things you've been through might help other people. And that doesn't mean they're entitled to every part of my life or my energy.
Exactly.
And that gets a little muddled too. So narcissism, we can see it kind of like, I like to look at it from both all these different angles, not just, oh, the narcissist is over there, but also how are we perpetuating these cycles within us? How are we relating when we are encountering an actual narcissist, and the personality
Yeah.
disorder, and then the qualities along the way, because it's really muddled. It's not that clear cut in a lot of these circumstances.
Yeah, when you say muddled, it's kind of like when people try to diagnose bipolar. A lot of times, you hear people say a lot of times that that one's very muddled, and it's hard to diagnose it because there's so many different things that come into that factor. And and I get it's toward the weird messages. I get tons of those weird messages. Like I get somebody every day, like, "Oh, do you want me to promote your podcast? Here, pay me some money first." I'm like, "Well, that's
Right.
nice. I
Yeah.
need you to show me some results first." And I had a conversation with somebody on Discord because I just got a sponsorship from W, which is one of those energy drink company things. I had these guys, just everybody hitting me up like, "Oh yeah, well, I have 1 million followers." Okay, so if you have 1 million followers, how is it you're not making enough money versus somebody with 5,000? And I'm just questioning
Right.
all these things as they're telling these things. I'm like, something here doesn't make any sense. And then
Yeah.
one guy, he decided to call me a very interesting. He called me a racial slur because he got mad because I'm like, dude, I'm not paying you anything because I don't know who you are. First off,
Right.
you're just some random person who hit me up on the internet. Like, I asked about you. I'm like, okay, so what's your business? Who you represent? What are some of the things you've done? What are some of your, stuff like that? All the questions you should be asking everybody, not just giving into all these weird, hey, listen, this guy says I can make a bunch of money. And
Right.
it's funny I say that too, because I had a friend that called me the other day, and he's a real good personal friend of mine. He helped me get through my first relationship that had ended terribly. It was the one that was gaslighting and manipulating me and everything. And he calls me the other day to tell me about this idea. And I'm just thinking, dude, what are you talking about? Like, he's literally telling me all these things. I'm like, what, dude? He's like, yeah, he said I can make all this money just doing this. I'm like, man,
Oh
this
man.
starting to sound like a pyramid scandal here, bud.
Yeah. So dangerous. You just never know. Like there's
Yeah.
some good opportunities, but then you got all that.
You gotta start questioning a lot of stuff because you're like,
Yeah.
I don't know, man. This doesn't sound like something that makes any sense. And he was trying to explain it to me, and I'm just like, dude, I can understand a lot of things, but what you're saying, yeah, I don't get what you're saying there, man. Okay, all right. And I'm like, hey, man, I gotta go. I'm tired. I'm gonna go to bed now.
It's so true.
And I feel bad when I cut the conversation off because he's so excited to tell me, but at the same time, it's like, dude, I don't know, man. It doesn't sound too reliable of information. Who's this person you got this information from? Oh, he's a self-made millionaire. Everybody's a self-made millionaire these days.
Right.
Hell, there's that guy in TikTok that used to claim that he had all this money, and then it turned out he did it. It's like, guys, it's just a persona he's playing. It's TikTok.
That's
It's
right.
not real life.
Yeah.
He didn't even have his real name on there. He had a wholly fake name. And it's like, I think you don't understand the difference between a character versus somebody being themselves kind of thing. It's like.
And social media
crazy.
perpetuates that. It allows people to be characters. That's exactly
what
what
people
it is.
attack people too. So remember that now, because we used to have the phone back then. It was the only way you could reach somebody, or you had to see them in person. And now we have these what do you call them? Keyboard warriors that get on there and say the most heinous things to people. And it's terrible. I'm sure you deal with that all the time.
All the time. I actually, it's kind of funny. I really don't mind that anymore. I just, of course, there was a time when it would just drive me a bit crazy. I really don't give it any more attention. Now it's just, I delete, I'll get whether it's messages or comments on stuff, I just delete it. I think for me, my trigger around all of that stuff is when it's closer to home. That's where, like, I can handle anything from strangers, but like if it's people I thought were my friends or family or something, and there's some like, oh, well, you think you know more than everyone, or whatever, whatever kind of nonsense.
Yeah. No,
like,
I get you.
Not really. I've just decided, because, there's this other dynamic that we're talking about here, which is like, when you're an entrepreneur, you're somebody that has chosen to make a business out of your gifts and your skills and your talents, that can really trigger people, because on one hand, they may want to create something similar. On the other, though, they could be like, you're crazy. Why don't you have a 9-to-5? Why don't you have benefits and this pension and work for the state or the government, or whatever it is, right? Whatever the thing is. And so it's kind of interesting how even just choosing to do the kind of work that we choose can activate people and bring out those qualities too. So yeah, that's something I've had to deal with quite a bit, is the like, who do you think you are? But not necessarily just from strangers. From them, it's like, I can handle that all day. I don't care. You have no bearing on my life, right? It's like, I don't really, I really just could care less. But when it's closer to home, that's where my work has been, and just recognizing, this path isn't for everyone, and the people can care about you and still be triggered by the different things that are coming up. Sometimes they feel insecure. Sometimes they feel inadequate. Sometimes they're making, you said the word assumption, like there's a lot of assumptions being made there.
There's a lot of assumptions that get made. I get people at work that joke at me all the time. They're like, oh, you're famous. And I'm like, yeah, you can Google me now. I literally can tell you to Google me and I'll show up on the Google engine. Trust me. And they're like, oh, you're so show this. I'm like, don't be jealous. You can't be on here. They're like, oh, I said I'd come do it. Okay, well, we'll get you on there. Don't worry. You might have to wait till next year, because that's how fast spots are filling up.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, you're so famous now. I'm like, I didn't say I was famous, but okay, sure, why not? Why didn't you say that? Go ahead, guys. Why not? I lucked out, honestly. I did. Like I said, Oracle's the reason I'm here right now. Like I said, Tom was the guy originally reached out to me, and he just saw what I had to say, and he was like, hey, man, I like what you're going with. How about we give you a shot, and see where it goes from there, and he's made several other comments about how, like, I'm an ideal show host and things like that. And all I'm doing is just promoting the network, because they're the ones that gave me this opportunity. I make sure to mention them in almost every post I can with anything related to the show, because without them, it's just, I wouldn't be sitting here right now, and I'm very grateful for it. I didn't think I'd be here a year later. I mean, like I said, I did my other one, and people are asking me about my other one. They're like, "Oh, how do you get ad monetization so fast?" I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm still learning
Right.
these things. I've only been doing this for about a year now. Actually, about a year yesterday, about a year now that I've been doing this, officially. And it's crazy because, I didn't think I'd be sitting here now. Like I said, the last time we had a conversation, everything's changed since the last time we talked and things like that and all that stuff. And it's just been crazy. Now I've got a better schedule set up. I'm not trying to do so much. I do just like stick to 1 day a week. That's it. That's when I do all my stuff. And after that, everything else is done. And so when I get off here, then that's it. My day's over. I go and do something with my wife and everything. Cause these are usually I do this on my day off or whatever. So I'm trying to find the balance between everything. And that's the hardest part about it too. I have a friend, he's actually starting a podcast. It's funny you say that people want to do something similar to you. There's a friend of mine, he wants to do a podcast as well now because of me. He's like, yeah, I think I should start my own thing. I'm like, I think you should go for it, man. Give it a shot. You never know until you try. I mean, really,
Right.
you never know where it's going to go. He wants to do something similar to this. So I was like, hey man, go for it. Why not? Give it a shot. See what happens. You never know. You might enjoy it a lot, so, shout out to Mr. Real on TikTok. He's starting his own podcast. I'll have more details. I'm actually trying to get him to come on and talk about it some more. So we'll see how it goes. And maybe I'll suggest you to go over to, if you're okay, I'll give you your contact information to him and see what he thinks and let him see what you think about it and everything like that too. Because, I always try to suggest anybody that's been on the show or done these recordings with me and things like that. I always try to get more people on their shows and help them out and stuff. I'm all about, supporting people.
Yeah.
And they want to do it too. Cause I've been here, I've been there. I know what it's like. And trust me, I'm learning things still. So I pass on the knowledge I have, and I'm sure you get that a lot of times. People are like, oh, well, you're an international bestseller. I bet you think you're better than us. No,
I don't.
I told people that when I met you the first time. I was like, man, I just talked to the coolest person ever. I said, she's an international bestseller, dude. And you wouldn't even know it, man. She's just so easy to talk to, very friendly, real down to earth type of person, and I think that's what's they again is that a lot of people make those assumptions about people.
Yeah.
And things like that, just because you're this or that, you're not, and it's like, what is it, like Jelly Roll and them? They get attacked a lot too, but they're just the coolest people in the world because they're very grateful for where they're at.
That's it. There's so much gratitude. And I think that's the difficult thing with a lot of this is you can be such a grateful person and a hard worker and just be, things just come together in a certain way and it just activates people. They don't know what to do with it because it brings up their own stuff. It's really, I mean, that's probably the biggest projection that I've seen in all of this work is the people who want to be your friend because they think that you have something that, to offer them, people that want what you have and think that because you have some type of success that you should give it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just like you. I'm like, hey, if I align with someone or resonate with them, I'll be the biggest supporter. I'll be sharing their info, be like, hey, you got to meet this. I love connecting people and collaborating, Definitely. But with discernment. And this work has taught me boundaries too. It's taught me that, there are some people that will just seek you out because of you being a pawn on their path to support them. And I'm not all about that. I've had a lot of people that have helped me in my life, in my business, and I'm so grateful for their presence and the way that they contributed to me taking steps and growing and healing from my own ordeals and things like that.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's back to that entitlement. It's like, but we don't owe anybody anything just because you started a podcast, just because you're a bestseller, just because you sold 1 million of this or that, or just because whatever it might be, we owe people nothing. And the more that we can focus on the passion of the work, the more service I think that we inherently do. And that's the thing I think people are missing is like, there's a lot that we contribute to people in giving from that place of gratitude, of wanting other people to also succeed. It feels so good to watch people do good things. Like when you're talking about how far you've come in the podcast and the words, I'm just like, I am cheering you on. I'm like, yes, this is what it's all about. Because I really believe that we can all win. We can all win. And that's another thing. Narcissists, nope. That's not how it works for them. They are the winner. They are the top. They have to be the main person, the main thing.
Yeah.
But when you have an honest, genuine person who's like sharing and generous with their time, with their energy, they're really good at taking that. So for those of us that are compassionate and really excited about what we're doing, we still have to be mindful of that. We still have to be sort of not overly cautious, but considerate of these things. And it's taught me to have better boundaries. And it's really interesting because for some, even though there's been a couple nightmare situations, like I was talking about earlier,
I have one too. I'll tell you about when we get off here in a second. I'll
Yeah,
definitely tell you about one because there's one I want to tell you about. I just don't want to share it on here. I just don't think it's that type of thing. But I can give you a good snare on that one.
Yeah. But there's been more respect, I think, than drama. There's been more appreciation than drama. There's been more people who I get the most beautiful messages, and I really do take the time and just, I'm always like, thank you so much for sharing this with me, for, it's very different. So I just want to make that clear, because not all the messages are like, help me, save me, fix me, do it for free. That happens too. But some of them are like, hey, I just heard you on this episode and you were talking about whatever, and I loved how you said that and it resonated, and thank you. And I'm just overjoyed. I'm like, you know what? I would do this all day for fun. The fact that it might help someone along the way, that's like icing on the cake. Exactly. And I'll take the time to respond. So it isn't all bad, but I think that it's important for those of us who, and it doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur or not, but just somebody who's encountering these difficult dynamics, to keep doing what you're doing. Trust your instinct, because you are not crazy. Right. You're not overthinking, overanalyzing.
And you're not ignoring people. So, for everybody that does that, I'm not trying to ignore you. I'm one man doing this whole thing on my own.
That's right.
I'm starting to put pieces into place little by little. I do have somebody that edits my sound now. So that's why your episode hasn't come out yet, because he's been cleaning it up for me. And it's actually somebody I work with. He gifted me a laptop. One of the people gifted me a mic. The mic I'm using now, I got gifted from somebody else. So a lot of this stuff I've just kind of been piecing together as I go and things like that. And, shout out to my parents too, because my dad hooked me up with the arm for the thing and everything like that. So my sound quality is a lot better than the last time we talked, because I remember I had an issue with the mic. It kept cutting in and out. And I was like, damn, I had to pull the plug of this thing and yank it and go.
It's all growing pains, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. No, I agree totally. Because I told him when I sent over our original conversation, I was like, hey, man, just be ready for this. I said, it gets choppy in the beginning because I didn't know the settings of the mic. And when I did a little digging in, I found out some more things and, stuff like that. And now I'm using this one StreamYard now. I'm learning how to use this one now. This is kind of cool, actually, because
I like this platform.
I can do. Yeah, this one's really cool because in my episode with Brandy Luke, I can actually post YouTube comments right below the name. And I did it when I was talking to the gentleman from Brian from Alive and Stone and stuff like that. We were just talking, and there's a girl in the comments that was just constantly saying things. And so they'll pop up right here on the screen. So I'm still figuring a lot of this stuff out as I go. So it's pretty cool.
It's awesome.
As we get ready to wrap up, do you have any plans for a podcast?
I have a podcast. Yeah. So I did.
Do you? I don't think we talked about that one, huh?
Yeah, I think it was new. I think it was really new. I don't think I was pretty much focused, and I just kind of did a few episodes. So I've only got 2 episodes out. It's
okay. What's it called though? Because I'd like to follow it for sure.
Yeah. So it's on Spotify. It's called A Dose of Depth with Melissa Kim Corter. And I talk about film forensics and fairy tales and all the different layers of psychology and the hidden parts of the mind, the dark side of the psyche. And I have a little rating for it. So it's like, if there's one skull, it means it's pretty clean. Yeah. Probably not too dramatic. The more skulls, the more intense the content, the subject matter.
Oh, I'm down for film. Listen, me, I can quote film from our last conversation. I quote films all day, every day. My wife said I have the uncanny ability to quote music albums on the spot too. She thought that was very impressive of me. So definitely, if you ever wanted me to come on, we could talk film all day. I could talk crazy films all day. I'm definitely down.
Like psychological thrillers and horror, those are the top genres.
Oh, I'm definitely, yeah. Oh, yeah. Hit me up for sure. Let me know. I'll definitely be there without even a question. That'd be awesome. I'd love to do that with you. That'd definitely be fun to do.
Yeah.
So, but everybody, go and follow her podcast. Like she said, man, check it out. She only got 2 episodes, but it's all right. You got more coming down the line. You never know. You might see me on there eventually too.
Yeah.
So,
did you start?
You have anything planned in the future? I know you have the book coming and everything like that. Is there anything else you got coming on? Any more appearances you're making?
Oh, so many things are happening right now. Let's see. I'd probably say the biggest thing I have going on is in just a few weeks, I have this, it's like a fall related kind of thing. But it's actually a free challenge. So depending on when this episode comes out, you may or may not be able to hop in there.
No, this one's actually live, and this one will be posted on the audio version. This will be posted Thursday. So Yeah, we are
Awesome.
100% live right now. People can see this, and they'll be posted on my YouTube channel. The minute it ends,
Oh,
it stays
sweet.
there.
Okay, cool. So yeah, so you guys can go to my website. I don't have the listing up just yet. It's getting worked on right now. But I do this free challenge, and this one is really, it's interesting. It weaves the fairy tales and intuition, and it's primarily geared towards women, but I'm not exclusive to women. I just tend to use a lot of language in it that's very much about like healing and shadow and stuff that is more like got a magical kind of quality to it. But yeah, and I do a lot of mentoring and group programs and stuff around giving a psychological pattern. And then we work with a fairy tale to see how
Oh,
that
that's interesting.
translates to life
Oh, that
experiences.
sounds pretty
And
cool, actually. I kind of
that's
like that.
fun.
I'm gonna have to check that out for sure. That
Yeah,
that sounds
it's
like a
fun.
very interesting way to
It's deep.
adapt them. Oh, it
Yeah.
sounds like it's gonna get pretty deep on that one too.
Yeah, it's intense. It's good though. People come out of it just feeling more solid in who they are, trusting their instincts, realizing like they're even with all this dark stuff we talk about, narcissism and psychopathy, there is beauty in the darkness too, and that's part of the goal, the intention for sharing that experience.
Yeah, definitely. Did you want to plug any socials where people can find you, things like that? Any I know your book's available on Amazon and stuff like that. We talked about that the last time, and just where can people find you if they want to reach
Yeah,
out to you? And be nice, by the way, people. Don't be rude to her, okay? She's very nice. No
that's all
need
right. I
those
can handle
nasty
it.
comments.
It's all good. You can go to my website, melissacorter.com, and that's really where everything is. And then the only other thing that I'm kind of pushing some traffic to, besides the podcast, The Dose of Depth, is my Substack blog. So I write about all this kind of stuff and share
Oh, okay.
articles on there, and that's called Hauntingly Beautiful Things.
Yeah, you'll have to send me send me a link to that because I definitely want to check
Yeah.
that out too. Because I'm always interested in learning new things and stuff like that. I've been looking at some psychology books, and Dr. Tim the other day told me, he said that to basically focus on the things I want to know. So
Mhm.
I just did that. I got little tabs out and everything in the book of different sections I can go through and read everything and educate myself a little more better on things like that. And I know we jokingly talked the last time. I was like, oh, you can always send me a signed copy, and you're like, yeah, oh, I can do that for sure. I was
I'll
like, I was telling
totally do that.
I'm going to tell you right now. I told everybody, but I was like, oh my God, guess what? This woman I talked to said she's going to send me a signed copy of it. I'm going to
I
keep it and cherish it
totally
in my
will.
case.
As
Because
soon as I
off
get
to my
away.
left here, I have my case of just stuff. My wife has all her things in there. I have my stuff. I cherish my collectible stuff. My like very minimum now. I've kind of got past the hoarder stage a little bit with her help. I had to start purging things because I had too
Nice.
many and stuff like that. But guys, like I said, Melissa, it was great having you again. Definitely want to have you again for the third time when the book gets closer, or if I think of some other topic, we can come back and talk about it again. It's great having you as well. I'll definitely check out your podcast. Guys, you already know where to find me. Pete versus Anxiety Pod on the TikTok. I'm on Pete versus Anxiety on Instagram, and it's Pete _versus_ anxiety. And it's with 2 N's, by the way, because I just did it, just a little play on words. And in case anybody looks at it and goes, well, you don't know how to spell. I know how to spell. I did it purposely to just throw people off. There's my Facebook group, the Pete versus Anxiety Facebook group. I usually post all my interviews that are going to be happening and things I got going on first there. Then I'll tell everybody else about it. It guys, like I said, it's like I always say, it's always great. And it's always, one kind act can always save somebody's life. What you just acknowledging somebody could save their life and make them feel great. Even saying hello to somebody, and it costs nothing to be kind to people, guys. Just remember that, as you said, and be nice to Melissa. Okay, stop sending her crazy messages, please. All right. She said she's tired of them. Dang it. All right. But anyways, guys, this has been
I'm
another
just gonna
exciting
start
episode,
posting them. I'll start resharing
right?
them.
You should technically really do it. Honestly, that would be a great
Yeah.
whole segment. Look at the interesting message I got today, guys. I think he's happy to see me.
Oh my
There's people
god,
that get
that's
just
gonna
make a
be my
TikTok of
YouTube.
just that, just the crazy things that people post to you. There you go, right there.
I'm gonna do that.
So, anyways, guys, this has been another exciting episode of Pete versus Anxiety. Don't forget, next week I have a double header. I have Miss Tanya at 10 a.m. and then 3 o'clock I'll have Joel and Bree from TikTok coming to join me to talk what else, mental health, guys. But anyways, until next time, y'all take care of yourself. Melissa, you have a great day.
Thanks, Pete. You too, and thanks so much again.